I'm going to frame our summit into four key sort of buckets that I saw it unfolding. So one was policy, second one was investments, third was capacity, and fourth is incentives. So this is basically what we saw as a summary of the summit. The policy bits were issues around enabling innovation and then sequencing. So do you adopt policy before? Do you adapt after? Or policy can catch up? So there's a conversation around how we need to do policy making a little bit differently in terms of agility. The second thing I think, and that was keen, and I'm sure it will run across all the tracks, is being very deliberate around the policies. And I think it came through our first keynote, who was the Honorary Consul for Estonia. And so our track really spoke to how do we ensure that there's a deliberate policy that ensures government uptakes innovations, especially around the fourth industrial revolution. I'm basically talking about procurement. How do we modernize that? So it helps young people. And with that, I think there's some work there to be done. The other piece, of course, is the process of policy itself. It's too slow. How do we ensure that it can catch up, but also doesn't stifle innovation? Then going to investments, basically deliberate again investing in entrepreneurs and innovators and their innovation, flipping up the model to the extent that they are the ones now who are driving the economic growth. The other piece was interesting that it's not about technology. It's about focusing on how technology can unlock value, but also fix problems. And so we were taken back to the second and third industrial revolution, where we still have challenges of food. We still are importing food. We're still having challenges around healthcare. And so how do we ensure that we focus on making things, and how innovation at the fourth industrialization does that, but also creates opportunity in a way that is more sustainable? Because in our panel, somebody actually talked about we are getting into the fifth industrial revolution. The other piece around investments is de-risking investments. Are there new models within which we can resource innovations in a way that we more de-risk and do not necessarily create another challenge around money? And what are we investing in? We are a country that still has a lot of inequality. So it's not about the shiny things. It's also about investing in the frugal innovations, the market-creating ones that actually reach people. And I think we heard from the Commonwealth Secretary General's speech, it's about changing lives. And so how do we ensure that the fourth industrial revolution does that? Capacity, and this is where I'll sprinkle in the skills, is how can we ensure that we build the foundations of a resilient fourth industrial revolution? These foundations we saw again across the 6 pillars. One is data. You cannot talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning without having a data system, but including data protection, data security, data literacy. The second piece, of course, is internet, and we had a speaker on Monday evening really talking about how do you ensure that we reach everybody, but also ensuring that internet costs and data costs are affordable. The third piece, of course, is skills. How do we keep up with the ever-changing environment of the fourth industrial revolution? And so how do we continue to skill, reskill, and upskill, but also ensure that our institutions of learning remain agile? How do we augment research in a very agile way that keeps abreast and ensures that everything we do is data-driven? How do we ensure that we have energy? How do we power this revolution? In our session, we really had a challenge there because we don't see a lot of innovations around power and energy. The fifth one, of course, is agile governance, and the sixth one is finance. And how do we ensure that those resource pockets remain sustainable? Then in the midst of things is, as much as we are skilling and building capacity, how do we ensure that our skilling is fit for purpose? It's just not for paper. And then how do we ensure that we build new business models? And this is for existing businesses that are subject to disruption. And we'll mention industries like media, who are heavily disrupted. Of course, the sort of automobile industry around taxi hailing, and also hotel industry, and we see more disruptions. And then finally on this bucket, incentives. How do we incentivize for fostering collaboration? And I think this is where we really had a good landing, and congratulating Kenya for creating that space even for us to talk. We realized that a lot of people in the room never talked before. And so potentially that is an incentive to bring people together to have a conversation, to see what is possible if and when they do things together. So finally, in terms of now the buckets, we landed on interesting things. As much as we are 4IR track talking about policy, investments, capacity, and incentives, we landed on 4 key principles. It's about people, ultimately. It's a human, and not necessarily the technology that will drive this agenda forward. It's the processes that must be inclusive, leaving no one behind. It's the platforms. We are in a platform economy. So it's the platforms with Netflix and the rest. So collaborating to build something that we can all. But also I see KIW as one of those platforms. And then it's about partnerships. How do we ensure that we collaborate, save money, build things faster, fail faster, spread risks, avoid duplication. We had a couple of areas that we think are our way forward. One is we think we need to build more use cases. We had Kuza Biashara, we had Usiku games that could be unicorns, but how do we build those use cases, but also build the zebras, the gazelles, and the rest, because that's where we have a majority of Kenyans. We agreed with the government of South Africa and South African Space Agency, who are presenting in the session, to collaborate on a space challenge next year. And the space challenge is, how do we leverage the capability of space to fix our old problems? Issues around urbanization and urban planning and spatial planning, issues around food systems, issues around road security. There's just, we looked like 20 to 30 areas we can do a space challenge that then addresses our issues. An energy challenge. How do we ensure that these devices are rugged enough that understand our energy needs, and we can push the capability, the hours. Devices around 7 hours, can we push them to 10, can we push them to 15? And we have interesting international partners happy to do that. An investor map on the investables around the fourth industrial revolution. There's no way there's no way you can find this, and so how do we build this? Then there's a commitment to a policy lab. How do we train our policymakers in terms of agile policy making? And so that is a commitment between UNDP and of course Kenya, and that will be done. The final commitment is an index. Where are we? Something that ensures we understand our readiness. So our fourth industrial revolution readiness index, that we can assess ourselves based on our understanding, so that we can have a baseline, and then every year incrementally improve that at KIW.